Welcome to After the Call, the podcast dedicated to the stories and struggles behind the badge, the turnout gear, and the uniform. Each week, we'll bring you a powerful conversations with first responders, mental health professionals, and advocates who are breaking the stigma, sharing their journeys, and offering real solutions. We'll talk about PTSD resilience, family impact, and the resources that can make a difference. Because the job doesn't just leave scars on the body, it affects the mind, the heart, and the people who serve alongside us. And no one should have to carry that burden alone. This is After the Call, where you'll find strength through resilience.
All right, so welcome to another episode of After the Call. I'm your host, Patrick, with my co-host, Veronica. We also have our Tri-Coast, Tori.
Okay.
You made that title sound exciting.
Tri-host.
Tri-host.
Yeah. And then we have Josh.
Hello.
Josh is a former firefighter. He's my man crush. He's also on my firefighter calendar on the refrigerator. I don't know.
We didn't get that calendar, so I think that's just a you and Josh photo exchange thing.
I don't even know if it's official, but I got a copy.
I think it's official from what I've seen in the past hour. So. At least I would hope so.
So I wanted to bring Josh on here because not only is he part of being our peer support liaison for the fire department, but I also want to talk more about your personal story with where you were as a firefighter.
Yeah.
I know you also have your foundation, which we will do on another episode, but I wanted to just kind of get more of your personal stuff.
Yeah.
Experiences and all that stuff.
Sounds good. Yeah. I started my career, I guess, first of all, I didn't even know what I wanted to do with my life. I came out of high school, and what I wanted to do more than anything was just study the brain. I wanted to be a neuroscientist. I thought the human mind and all that was very interesting. So I was going to school to do that, but I took a CPR and first aid class over the weekend at MCC. It was taught by a 10B firefighter. And I just thought she was the coolest person I'd ever met. I just thought she was the most know-how individual and could just roll the punches, take on a problem, solve it, and keep on going with their day. And I just thought that was something about her situation had to be because of the job. So I decided to derail my whole life and become a firefighter instead. So that started around 2008. I got hired on a Black Canyon Fire, and I did that for about 8 months as a volunteer. They paid us per call, and they also gave us like $15 food vouchers that we could like use around the city. They were like these little cutout deals they were all $5 each, and we would like pay with this Monopoly money. And then they'd go to the city after a month, and they'd be like, "All right, here's how much of the purple money we had." Wow. And the fire department cut them a check. So I did that volunteer for a little while before I got my first full-time gig at Gila River Fire, and I did that for 5 years.
Hold on, you're like jumping like super fast in this. Like, he's like already and then I retired. So
and then and now I'm here with you, bro.
Where'd you go to like the academy and stuff like that?
Okay, so MCC, I moved. I was only taking my preliminary classes when I decided to make a shift from brain science into fire science anyway. So okay. I just jumped right into MCC, took their EMT class, took their hazardous materials course, and right after that I took the Fire 1-2 class, where we're all, being all that we can be for 16 weeks.
Was it challenging? I mean, was there parts of the courses you went through that were fun, challenging? Did you fail any of the courses, like that kind of stuff?
No, I didn't fail any of the courses, but, I didn't have, so many firefighters have the family history of fire service in them, right? Mm-hmm. My family's not that far removed from the boat coming over from Italy, right? I'm only 2 generations down, so I don't have many people. My father's been a carpet cleaner his whole life.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you were Italian.
Yeah, I'm talking with my hands already.
I thought he was Hispanic, honestly.
I can speak Spanish, or I can speak Italian. Bop-a-da-boopy. Bop-a-da-bop-a-da-boopy.
Perfect.
So, yeah.
I knew exactly.
Totally knew what you're talking about.
I've seen that at a restaurant before.
But anyway, yeah, so I found the classes challenging. Kind of what I wasn't prepared for was how demanding the lifestyle was going to be. And I didn't have a mentor in my life, like a father figure or anybody in my family or friend group that would tell me, like, hey, in a 21-year career, you're deciding to spend 7 whole years of that time on shift. It's a big commitment. You don't realize your family tends to age a third faster. You tend to... Your personal life can only move at a certain clip because you have to suspend everything you're doing in your personal life to go to shift work, and that, that turning on and off of your civilian life and your career life, that was a challenge. But I didn't face that till I was actually on the job. But through the training and everything, it wasn't too difficult. I've always been fairly hardworking and into physical fitness and into being all that I can be. So I found it a lot of fun.
We need a T-shirt that just says that.
I'll add that one.
Be all that you can
potty
be.
mouths and black hearts.
And if you haven't noticed, we're wearing our new shirts.
Yes.
All of us. Yep. So were you already married at the time?
No. So I met my wife in college. She was in our English class together, and who the hell is that? And I've been dating her ever since, but she was with me through every interview, every testing process,
Nice.
All the frustrating moments of what I struggle with the most. You asked what I struggle with the most. I was awful at turnout drills. So firefighters have to learn, obviously, how to put your coat on, put your jacket on, put everything on as quickly as you can. And I was terrible at it. I was so slow, and for night after night after night in my Gila River Academy, I'd come home with all my gear, and I had to practice and I'm throwing my turnouts all over the kitchen. I'm so mad because I just can't get this time down. So I struggled with that. That was tough for me, but she's been there with me through every step of the way. So even into my last step when I snapped my knee. So
would you guys challenge each other? She's just better at it than you.
She's definitely better at most things than I am.
she's doing whatever, the exact amount, and you're like,
every time.
That's why they're thrown in the kitchen. Fuck this.
You think you're better than me?
all right. So finally passed academy, get hired on as reserve. When you went to Gila River, volunteer, right?
So Gila River was full-time. Black Canyon was my volunteer experience. Okay. And then from Black Canyon, I tested into Gila River, got on there at 19. So I was real lucky. So many firefighters test until, they're 25, 26 and maybe get on. I was fortunate to get on so young. But, to that point in my life, I hadn't lost a significant family member. I think I've told you all before, my great-grandma's still kicking, And so being in the fire service is my first real brush with death, destruction, anything like that. I hadn't even been to a personal family funeral, right? So, being in the fire service and seeing it firsthand without having any sort of personal way to relate to that experience was interesting for me, to say the least. Just seeing dead people in public spaces rather than in a private group where people are mourning, that was strange for me at first, So that was definitely a struggle I had.
Yeah, and we'll get more into the feeling people have with that. So, talk a little bit about the differences going from one department to another. Maybe the culture.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, Black Canyon wasn't the change from Black Canyon to Gila River was almost insignificant. We all knew we were volunteer down there at Black Canyon. The full-time staff that was down there knew they were doing nothing but training. Most of the people who wanted to go off and do a full-time career somewhere. So that change wasn't too different, but going from Gila River to Eloy was a big change. When I got hired on the Gila River, I had there's a train. There's a train. That reminds me of my Eloy experience right there. Eloy actually stands for East Line of Yuma. It's a train station. It's a train station town. Anyway, trivia.
The more you know.
The more you know.
You got to add that to the
rainbow. Stay tuned.
But on Gila River, I came into that experience. Obviously, I was right out of high school, so I was fresh to learn what real life was as an adult. But my academy class was brought on because the Gila River Indian community at the time decided to fire the department's battalion chiefs on Christmas Day.
Wow.
So a couple years before that, the community had come to the fire department and said, hey, we want to see more community members in management roles. And the department just didn't move on it fast enough. And so the tribe decided to give them the space to hire in their community members, and they fired 4 battalion chiefs. And my academy class was the 4 firefighters that were hired to replace them. And that was a weird challenge because for the first year or so, my academy class, my group of guys, we didn't do anything wrong yet, but we just came with this bad taste in the department's mouth. You know what I mean? We just represented this horrible injury to the department. So it took us a little while to make our own and to make our own name and to kind of shake that association. So that was definitely a struggle early in my career, along with just being a non-community member serving in the heart of an Indian reservation. when I was on a fire truck with 4 non-community members, nobody batted an eye. That was just the visual representation of what the department looked like that day. When I had 2 community members on the fire truck and 2 non, same kind of thing, right? But on the days where I was the only non-community member working on a 3 community member fire truck, the association from the community was, you're taking a job now. And those were the days where I would get a little bit more of the comments. You know, some community members are not the most shy about telling you about harms of the past, right? So that was a healthy experience for me at the very least, to kind of experience what it's like to be disliked just for the way I look. I'd never been in that situation. So that was actually really healthy personal growth to kind of understand what that might feel like for others. But it was also the thing that made me want to maybe get off that community for the long haul. It wasn't something I was prepared to deal with for 25 years, right? So that's what...
Being cops, I mean, we obviously, people hate on us all the time, but it's not a cultural thing at that point, and it's definitely not us versus them kind of thing either.
But it's still, it's still extremely similar though, right? Here you are, just a visual representation of a police officer. Meanwhile, you're Patrick underneath.
Right.
But all they see is that, right?
Yeah, just the badge.
Same kind of thing here. You know, I was just Josh, but what they saw was 250 years of historical baggage, and that was frustrating, you know. So it's the same. It's very similar.
So with the community members that were on your truck at that time, how did they embrace you?
Oh, great. I mean,
so they weren't.
No, okay. No. It was just certain people within the community, like any community we serve, right? Some parts of our communities hate cops more than others. You know, some love us, and it's the same kind of thing. It just depended on what part of the district I was in, or the community I was in at that day, and who I was running into. So,
all right.
Yeah, by and large, the fire department loved me. I'm great.
They see what I see. So, all right. So now, kind of transition into the role of a firefighter there. Mm-hmm. What kind of stuff? Or where did you start at being on the truck? Okay, so they have like the driver, engineer, captain, all that. Mm-hmm. So where were you at?
I was bottom of the barrel firefighter, EMT. You know, so I was just the one doing all the grunt work and the one doing, you know, staying up late, making sure the coffee's ready in the morning, just doing my probationary duties. You know, I was definitely had a lot to learn, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed kind of a thing. But at Gila River, what I was able to accomplish outside of just getting my career off the ground was they put me through paramedic school. So that was like a big focus for me early in my career. Was I knew I wanted a family. I knew me and my wife wanted to start a family. Yeah. And I was at least wise enough at the time to realize that I've seen people with young families go through paramedic school, and that's very, very difficult. And then I've seen people who don't have those responsibilities go through paramedic school, and it's still challenging. But, you know, the problems that can exist when you're just by yourself doing all this work versus having to neglect your family and stuff in order to get this thing accomplished, you know. I was destined and hopeful I could become a paramedic before my wife started to bless us with more mouths to feed. So.
Were you not a part of that?
Oh, I was definitely part of that.
I just want to make sure.
At least, I mean, for a few minutes at least.
All right. Was there any of like hazing or anything that occurred?
Oh boy. I did a lot more. I was much more of a prankster. I was much more of a prankster than anybody could be on me. I remember one time, so on Gila River, it'll actually get pretty cold out there. You know, we'll definitely get below freezing temperatures in the middle of the winter. And I recognized this fact. And then there was a engineer at Gila River. He loved his Mustang, just loved it. So I got myself, 2 ambulance guys, and the battalion chief even, to wake up on rotation every 45 minutes or so. So we each woke up about 3 times a night. And we would put a nice little layer of water over his Mustang. So by the time he woke up, it was just a block of ice. I got written up, but the department had to give him overtime that day because he couldn't drive home. So they had to invent a shift for him so that he could just stay. That's why I got in trouble, because it cost the department money.
It was worth it.
But the battalion chief was laughing the entire time. So I like to pull pranks.
Nice. So you never got hazed, but obviously you were the prankster. Whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the first couple of years of being on the job in your role as a paramedic, EMT.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. You know, I loved the work. There was nothing about it that I knew I was doing something important. It didn't escape my attention that so many of my high school friends that were now in college and getting off their careers, they were just as stressed out as I was in a lot of ways, only they were stressed out about spreadsheets and numbers, and I found myself coming home stressed out because I saw a family get obliterated on the highway. But they seemed to be just as stressed out as I was, and that always seemed strange to me. It always seemed like, shouldn't my stress be more than yours because of the nature of it? But to my extreme surprise, somebody can be just as stressed out over selling computers. You know what I mean? So it did come with the sense of, all right, well, if I'm going to be stressed out doing something, at least I know my stress is valuable within a community. And that did root me a little bit. But I struggled. I struggled with, like I said earlier, I really wasn't prepared for the amount of damage or broken bodies I was going to see. I wasn't prepared to go to a station all the time and kind of feel like a lab rat in a maze. Here I was going about my day, in the middle of my workout, in the middle of my sleep cycle, in the middle of my shower, and tones would go off, right? Which is our job, and we would go. And obviously that's totally easy to do day in and day out, but it was that accumulative, just kind of feeling that jolt. I remember back when it was just like Nokia phones and stuff, but I'd be going through the grocery store and I'd hear someone's cell phone go off and I'd like jump. I'd have this like obvious reaction, and I'd kind of laugh about it with the person that was next to me just trying to get their frozen pizza. Like, oh, sorry, your phone scared the hell out of me. So I kind of dealt with a lot of that. And that was some of the early struggles for me. But as far as the work of being a firefighter and the actual job, I loved every bit of it, but it was these knock-on effects that were starting to kind of cause me a little bit of anxiety and stress early on in my career.
Do you have a specific call in your early years where you were like, all right, this is not normal?
Yeah, for sure. Well, there's two. I don't know which one would have been better to have gone on first, but the first time I really struggled on a call, we were going to a car fire. I'll never forget it. I had an engineer who I named my son after, actually, because he was just the coolest guy in the world. His name is Levi. Anyway, we were going to a car fire, and my captain was telling him as we were approaching our turn right, not left, turn right, not left. And for whatever reason that day, this engineer, who was just like the guy you want to have pumping your apparatus, he's a great engineer, he just made that mistake and he turned left instead. He heard the captain say left. No big deal. It was only a quarter mile out of the way. We were able to get to the scene, but it just so happens when we showed up to that scene, there was still a man trapped in the vehicle alive. In that extra 90 seconds, by the time we deployed the hose line, it was now a quiet scene, and I saw my engineer viscerally have like that moment of, holy shit, this is my fault. Not the car accident, not the fact that the combustion happened. It's not supposed to happen, right? Not the fact that the call was 4 minutes away and that whatever, he just endlessly blamed himself for his very minute role in what happened there that day. And I just watched it beat him up. So that was difficult. It was difficult to see that even an innocent mistake trying to do the right thing can also lead to trauma, can lead to difficultness. So that was an interesting experience. And then a few months later, I had a really wild scene where this young man was hanging out with his girlfriend, and he didn't know that she knew he was having an affair behind her back. And she got him into the house and got him to relax. And a few minutes later, her friend came in the back door and they tortured this guy for about 90 minutes, all kinds of ways, pulling off nails and taking nails to his shin bones and just doing all kinds of things to teach him a lesson. And when we got on scene of this call, what I remember isn't like the wounds he had. It was just the death behind his eyes. You know what I mean? Like, he was just completely overtaken with fear, and like he had lived his entire life on this planet, not realizing that at any moment he can be hijacked by somebody close to him and held down and tortured, right? Mm-hmm. And I just remember seeing his expression, and for whatever reason, his expression was so hard for me to deal with. I'd never seen somebody living and breathing right in front of me that is just so clearly gonna have problems now, And so that was a big moment for me too. So I had some struggles. I had some struggles with just wacky situations we find ourselves in as first responders when you're dealing with raw human misbehavior, raw human emotion, in just the haphazard way in which cities cause harm. Part of what I talk about in mindfulness in my training and stuff sometimes is I talk about how, cities, by and large, communities, they make us safer and more prosperous as people. That's why people flock from farms and rural communities into cities, because together we do better as humans. But cities have their own hazards too, whether it's people versus people or people versus machinery. And first responders are what's responsible for cleaning up those hazards. And it can be challenging for all of us in different ways. But
sure, 100%. Did you guys have a good relationship with the other first responders within your community?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Cops, and I've been very fortunate at Gila River and at Eloy. Cops and the firefighters and EMS typically have gotten along really well. Obviously you have those specific relationships that don't go well, and maybe it might take an entire career path to heal, right? Mm-hmm. But by and large, the organizations themselves had good relationships. So.
What about you? Did you guys have?
Yes. We had a really good relationship with our fire guys.
Yeah, Mesa was always good. I know Phoenix is totally opposite.
Yeah, that's wild. I don't even know how that could function.
They fucking hate each other.
Yeah, I don't know how that can function.
Which is weird, because you need one without the other, and it's like...
Yeah.
Whatever.
Although I've always enjoyed being called a second responder. That's always been a joke that I thought hilarious, because it's so true.
It's not a joke.
Yeah.
It's not a joke.
It's a fact. I don't know why he's laughing about that.
Firefighters get so upset, but it's like, come on, we're always second.
I mean, that's the thing. You got to get over that stuff. Like, the pride thing has to go out the window.
That's got to go.
We're facing all the worst stuff on people's worst days. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to take that stuff personally, you're not going to survive.
Yeah, it's true.
I'm not saying, you're not going to see bad shit, but you do have to have that morbid sense of humor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and just everyone's got a different role, Mm-hmm. Nothing's been more silly to me than when I see a chief officer in the fire department get overly angry with the sergeant on the police on the same MVA that we're all trying to clean up. It's like we all have the same objective, but we just feel like, all right, patient care or opening the highway or what's more important in this moment, whatever, and people get so locked up over silly situations.
Oh, yeah. Especially, and that's the other thing, too, is when you have to, shut down a scene because now it's going to be a homicide, or it's going to be, the evidence is what we need to preserve, which you guys don't care about. Totally, but I'm just saying, I understand where, that's going to start becoming an issue where, people have to know what's important, what's not, and what they can do and what they can't do.
Yeah,
so
right.
I get that. Real quick, back on Levi, did you ever notice where that affected him? Did it become something that permanently, messed him up, or?
Given, how many of us can say this, right? But given the knowledge and wisdom I have today at the ripe age of 36, 37, I totally probably could have seen some changes. But back then I was a, dumb 21-year-old kid. And, my captain, his message to us at the time was basically, suck it up, buttercup. And that was the last I ever really thought about it in public. Mm-hmm. I thought about it privately, still do from time to time. But no, I just kind of did what a lot of first responders do and oftentimes feel guilty later for, which is just let their brother deal with that on their own and move on. So it's kind of where I left that scene, and I still haven't talked about it with Levi to this day, which is odd to admit, but that's just the way so many of these calls get placarded in our headspace. So,
well, if he's listening or watching, at least he knows that you care.
Oh, he does.
Good.
He does.
All right. So with that in mind, where did you now transition in your career?
Okay. So I moved from Gila River to Eloy Fire. I worked with Eloy Fire for about 10 years. I was able to promote through to engineer, promote to captain.
How was that process going to engineer now?
Okay. So engineer was great. Many people will tell you that going from firefighter to an engineer is a great career move, and then going from engineer to captain is a bad career move. When you go from firefighter to engineer, as a firefighter, you're kind of yet another tool on the truck, right? You're a labor tool for all this equipment, and we're going to utilize you to set it up and execute it. When you become an engineer, you're now responsible for this, 3-dimensional truck space, from bumper to bumper, wheel to top. That's your unit. And not to say that you won't do some of the physical labor of a scene, and sure, but your main concern is keeping that truck and the people that are on it safe for every scene. Your captain has ultimate responsibility for safety, but he's managing a call, he's developing a call. Engineers respond. He's kind of like Mama Bear. You need water, you got it. You need this tool, you got it. Cones out to make sure it's safe. So your way of seeing a scene just changes when you become an engineer. All of a sudden, it's less about the patient care and about the ongoing problem, and more about feeding my team the resources they need from the truck to solve the problem.
So visually, he's not the guy in turnouts. He's always with all the contraptions on the truck. Okay.
Correct. And he's always the one, hey, we need a ladder. I got you. Break away from the pump if I can, go throw that ladder for the truck, coming back. You're always the one setting up, break it down, making sure your guys got water when they're coming out. So you're just the one that's maintaining their ability to function a little bit more.
Is there a lot of testing involved with that? I mean, is it much higher level of experience, or is it knowledge based, or what's the difference between a firefighter and the engineer in regards to, I guess, testing?
Yeah, so depending on the department, some departments will say 3 years, some 5 years of experience. It just depends, Obviously, some of the more rural cities I've worked for, they'll promote you up much faster because we need you to drive. Mm-hmm. Some of the larger cities will kind of make you wait in that firefighter role for a few extra years before we can test because, when you're in the middle of Eloy, Arizona, it's a big farming community. You can get away with a little bit more traffic violations and maybe not hit somebody because there's nobody else on the road. But when you're on the I-10 or the 60 in the middle of the city, there's much more tighter turns. You got to be a much more diligent driver. So obviously every department kind of has their different policies and procedures. But I think for the most part, when you come up to engineer, most of the time it takes about 3 years is kind of the earliest I'd hear before they let you behind the wheel of a fire truck. Okay. And to actually get that promotion. So.
And how long were you an engineer?
2 years. Two years before I promoted up to captain.
So what was the idea behind wanting to get promoted?
From firefighter engineer?
Yeah. Since it's a bad idea.
Well, from firefighter engineer, it was just, I had 5 years on with Gila River. I'd had 2 or 3 years on at Eloy at the time. So I was just ready for a new role and responsibility, Mm-hmm. I'd done the grunt work enough. I was going from young waterhead out of high school to now I'm been married for 7-8 years, and kids are coming to me asking me questions about seeing. It was just obvious that my experience and my role was shifting underneath my feet already a little bit, and now I could just get paid to do so if I'm willing to touch the fire truck wheel. So that was a big motivation. Having kids, things getting more expensive is a big motivation to promote, but definitely just wanting a little bit of a change and have a new responsibility. I always saw myself as wanting to pursue being a captain. I had a lot to learn. I definitely didn't want to be a crappy leader, and I just thought becoming an engineer was a good foot in the door of learning that secondhand leadership before taking the role and being a captain for my own crew and station. So
how was the testing for captain?
Much more exhausting. Engineer testing's tough. It's a lot of labor. So when you're training to become a firefighter, obviously you're training all these skills. You're having to throw all these turnout drills that I sucked at. Right? You're having to do a bunch of things, and when you go to engineer, you really have to learn that truck. I mean, you really do have to learn bumper to bumper, every mechanic on it, every single piece of equipment. And so you're just finding yourself learning hands-on what all the equipment does, what all the levers do, setup, breakdown all the time. Being a captain, I found myself in a chair studying policy a lot, studying procedures a lot. You wanted to, now you're going from just, okay, really as an engineer and as a firefighter, you're only worried about your captain level down. Well, the way your captain gets that information is by clipping out all the unnecessary crap and making sure that his crew can be successful through his eyes and his policy understanding, right? So you have to study as hard as you can to be able to learn everything that is a captain's responsible for, learn what the city needs of an officer, learn what your battalion chief needs of an officer, and be able to lead your guys and make sure that they don't derange their own careers through their bonehead decisions, right? Mm-hmm. So becoming an officer is just a completely different responsibility, not much different than anywhere else. When you go from, if you're making coffee at Starbucks to now managing a Starbucks, you have to learn how the money moves. You have to learn how people need to operate within the store, right? Same kind of thing. So just going from that personal management to that group management, anytime you're going from that, it's always going to be a little bit more of testing policies, procedures, but that's really what I did.
Did you find that the emotional part of your job changed when you were when you started to when you became management?
Clarify that a little bit more. What do you mean?
Just like what you were feeling on seeing some of those calls. Was it different as the captain than it was when you're doing all the, I don't know.
Yeah, no.
I don't really know firefighting and your guys' roles and whatnot, but like.
I'll say, when I was a firefighter and when I was an engineer, you obviously respond to calls, you obviously respond to scenes, but I remember when I became a captain, and I should have known, and I kind of did intuitively, but we went on a call where there was a little bit of a shooting. There was a shooting, right? Just a tiny shooting.
People shot.
It was one shot.
But it was a teenage girl. She'd gotten shot. I do believe she lived, but she was, to us the entire time we were dealing with her, she didn't look like she was going to live. And an hour later, when the firefighter approached me at the station with tears in his eyes, with a heavy heart, and just like really obviously, well, I was going to go to bed, but I guess I'm going to be up for the next 3 hours talking to this guy because he was messed up, right? And he was all of about 21 years old. And I was like, man, I know what he's going through. But that's what you're paid for as a captain. You're paid to be able to meet your guys where they're at when they're struggling. I always believed as a captain, if I could make you a good person, if I could assist your off-duty life, if I could understand, obviously that depends on how willingly open your people are with you. But I always found that if your home life was in order, making you a good firefighter was easy. Keeping you as a good firefighter, if your home life has gone out the window, is much harder to do. Mm-hmm. So I was always much, much more interested in how's your wife doing? How are your kids doing? What'd you do this 4 day? What vacations do you have coming up? And I would just always be listening for a general vibe of positivity, because the second that firefighter started to say, I don't know, man, me and my wife are arguing and this, that, and the other, and she's a bitch, and now that's what I'm going to be talking about for the next couple of tours with this guy is, how he's doing and how that's progressing. Because if it's going in a stepwise positive direction, he's doing okay, But if it's not, you could just see the work performance start to fall down. And I was always much more sensitive to that than I was somebody being dissatisfied with their job. That'll come and go with the next policy. But sure. once your home life gets messed up, really, really does get difficult for first responders to be able to serve that community well. So.
I'm glad, because there's a lot of supervisors that don't pay attention to that. Mm-hmm. And you can see who cares and who doesn't care. It's in every role of first responder. You have all the good ones and all the bad ones.
Absolutely.
So a big question that I have, firefighter, engineer, captain, when do you get your free lazy boy?
I thought you were going to ask him out on a date. So.
No, I'm just kidding.
Well, you get it after your probationary year.
No. So, all right. So now you're a captain.
Mm-hmm.
You're falling into the supervisor role. You're actually taking care of your people. You're seeing the things that need to be adjusted to make sure your crew is running properly. Is that something that you personally wanted to do, or is that something you got throughout your training?
Personally, for sure. So, up to the point of being a captain myself, I probably worked for 20 or 30, I probably worked for 100 different captains, but like actually, you don't really work for a captain unless you worked with him for 2 or 3 months, right? Otherwise, you're just filling in, just kind of hanging out and running calls together. When you're working with somebody for 3 months, all of a sudden they're going to try to take control of that structure. Think about the difference between having a teacher and a substitute teacher, you know? Yeah. So I've worked for probably 20 or 30 different captains, and I had a lot of great mentors, but I learned a lot more from the ones that were crap mentors, and if you are a first responder and you're working for a sergeant or a captain or someone that is just awful, you have an opportunity to learn more than you do if you have somebody great. And I was fortunate enough to just recognize that early, so I just knew what I didn't want to be. Mm-hmm. If I knew what I didn't want to be, it was much easier to just be some version of something that I would like to be. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what I wanted to be, but I just knew what I didn't. And that was actually much more illuminating than knowing, the bullseye of what I was trying to accomplish as a captain or a firefighter. It was just much easier to know what not to do,
Nice. So where do you go in your career now?
So in 2021, I snapped my knee on duty. I tore my ACL. Got back to the truck after rehabbing it. Worked for another 2.5 years. And then Thanksgiving Day, 2023, my crew comes up to me with, hey, Cap, want to go throw a football? I was like, yeah, sure, let's do it. Snapped my knee again. Right knee, same knee. Only this time it was much more impactful. And took me off the truck for over 1.5 years. I got several knee surgeries. I had to learn how to rewalk again. And that injury just led to medical retirement in the fire side. So got healed up. My right knee's much better than it was. Still causes me a little bit of pain, a little bit of slow. It's kind of tight. But I am fortunate enough to work for Mesa Fire Medical now, but I'm on the transport side. So I just get to show up, work my ambulance, transport people to the hospital, and I just don't have that physical concern that I would be on the fire service. But that's what I do now. So been with Mesa for, I guess, about 7-8 months now. So
how long from retirement from being a captain to doing this stuff with Mesa?
Well, it's hard to judge because I knew much sooner than I knew almost the day of, so December 11th of 2023, I talked to my surgeon, and my surgeon told me on that day, now would be a really good time to start looking for other options, because he could tell looking at the paperwork how bad it was. But when you're going through a workman's comp injury and your surgeon's that blunt with it, he's just trying to let you know as the patient, hey bro, this is probably going to end in this way. Not that you want to tell your department that just yet. You need to be showing effort. You need to be trying. And so I did. I tried everything I could. But I knew internally after talking to my surgeon, it was most likely just going to be the end of the helmet. So I had about 1.5 years to prepare. So as soon as I was done at Eloy, I was ready to go with Mesa. Only about 3 months later, because I had already put an application in. I was already involved in the process as I was coming out of going through the medical retirement process with Eloy. Okay. So my surgeon did a real big favor for me that day, because he kind of let me know, do everything you can, but have a backup plan, because it's most likely going to be the primary plan. So,
any time during that 3 months where things like became dark?
Oh, dude. Yeah. I mean, granted, I'd been practicing mindfulness for about 10 years at this point, but that doesn't mean I had been practicing it, right? I mean, I had been. You can go to the gym for 10 years and never need to lift a boulder off your loved one, and I just felt like when I snapped my knee, I was a pretty active guy. I have 2 boys at home. We love to play sports. On my off days when I wasn't on the fire department, my father and I at the time owned a carpet cleaning and tile cleaning business. So every off day, the only day I ever got off was Sunday. So if I wasn't at the department, I was cleaning carpet, cleaning tile, doing all that. I loved bodybuilding. I loved working out. I was just always on my feet, not as like any real goal. It's just what I found myself doing. And when I snapped my right knee the second time, man, I spent 6 months in a chair, because it took me 2.5 months. Snapped it in Thanksgiving. Surgery centers slow down the holidays just like everywhere else. I was fortunate to be a firefighter because I got kind of front of the line, but even front of the line around Christmas means, Sure. You're going to wait till January. So I didn't even get my surgery till February. And then after February, when you get the extensive knee surgery that I got, that's an 8-month on sitting down basically until you're off crutches. So, I really had to wrestle with my own mind. I really did for the first time. It's easy to sit with my eyes closed and practice mindfulness for 10 minutes a day just to wake up and go hang out with the guys at the station and have a great life. But nothing had challenged me at that point. And here I was being told, you might not be able to be a firefighter anymore. You might not be able to play basketball with your kids anymore. You might not be able to work with your dad anymore. I just felt all these valences kind of being taken from me. And if it was like, if I'm none of these things, then what the hell am I? What am I? You're always defining your life to yourself. You're always pitching this, I'm a firefighter, I'm a husband, I am a carpet cleaner, and those things just slowly kind of gotten robbed from me. And then sure enough, I had this wonderful insight. If I'm none of these things, then what am I? Well, I'm still that husband. I'm still that father. Those things don't go away. It didn't escape my attention that I had a moment. So any firefighters listening and cares about their kids and cares about their family life will know we worked 48-hour shifts at Eloy. And so for 10 years, I'd work 48 or 72-hour shifts. So I was working overtime. And so my wife would always give me this, I itinerary report of my family status coming home, Hey, Mason's doing this. Mason did this last 2 days. Levi this, but Levi's struggling in math. Okay, copy that. Struggling in math. So I'd come home, and what would Levi and I do for the next 4 days before I go out to work? We'd talk about math. And I would feel like an effective father. Look at me. I'm teaching my boy math. Come to find out, when I was home for that year and a half, I was just berating my son for 4 days on math. I was making him feel bad about math. And then when I was just going to be home for an extended period of time, there's no need to go to the station. Well, now if my kid has a problem in school, we have time. We can just work on this naturally. I don't have to write out 30 math problems, make you do it right now, Yeah. We can just wait for the homework assignment to come in, and then I can sit with you and we could talk about it. And I just saw how healthy that was. And there was this moment for me with my knee injury where it was like, okay, I was a pretty good guy before my knee injury. But my kids were also watching me go through this very human experience. It's the first time they're seeing their father. Oh shit, he's not God. He's not indelible. And I could just see at the time, my 10-year-old, my 8-year-old looking at me like, what is he going to do in response to this? Mm-hmm. And that was the moment I realized I was this guy before. And my kids are going to come to me someday with the story. Someday my 22-year-old son or my 17-year-old son is going to say, hey, Dad, you got a minute? You were this guy before the knee injury, and I loved you. But now you're this guy after, and I really appreciate the guy after. Good. Or they could have told me, what happened? You were this guy after, and then after the knee injury, you became this. What happened? And I just wanted the former story. I wanted them to see. I wanted the story that was going to come back to me and tell me, boy, did you make necessary changes and improve your circumstance. So that was a guiding factor for me throughout the knee injury for sure.
And I know you talk a lot about mindfulness. Without that being a factor initially, how did you mentally change your mind about that identity switch, right? Because I know you were talking about, I'm still somebody, I'm Josh, the husband, the father, that kind of stuff, but it's not an easy switch to make, right? So what kind of was that process for you to switch from firefighter to Josh?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, it's amazing what forced reflection will do for a person. I can't take full credit for even though I'm proud of the changes I've made. I really almost just can't take 100% credit for it because I was wrestling against the changes for a long time as I was trying to heal up. I wanted to squat 450 pounds again. I wanted to be the captain again. I was immiserating my entire experience because I wanted all the things I had to stay the same, while also and that just wasn't going to be a possibility. So once it just became evident that my life was going to be changing, I think the most effective thing I was able to do was allow it to change, and not try to change it in certain ways, but just allow the experience to fall, kind of do what it's going to, bring me into whatever it's going to be, whether I fall into a PE teacher or whether or not I find myself being able to go. One of my biggest fears was just not want to be that father that has to sit at Disneyland. And like, all right, I'll be here in an hour. I'll see you guys. I just got to take a rest. I want to be that grandpa that can let's go, let's do it. And that's at a certain point. That's all I gave a shit about, dude. I didn't care about a fire truck. I didn't care about squatting anymore. I just wanted to be the grandfather that could take my eventual granddaughter by the hand and be, let's go do the teacups. That's all I wanted. So you kind of just get to that point sometimes with certain phases of your life, and I'm talking about a knee injury, right? I'm not talking about getting diagnosed with cancer, but talk to somebody who's been diagnosed with a disease like that, and they'll tell you, look, man, you are breathing, and that's on some sense all that matters, And when I was going through that knee injury, I just remember hearing those lessons throughout my life, and it was like, look, in fact, here's a quick story. So there I was at a candy shop in crutches, just standing there immiserating myself. What a horrible thing to happen in the universe that I can't be a fire captain. You know how awesome I am as a fire captain, So I'm just immiserating my life at this candy shop. And we took my kids there because Dad had just lost his cool about an hour before, and I'm trying to make up for it. Go get yourself some lemon heads, And this guy comes up to me, and I could see him doing the thing. By this time, I'd been in crutches long enough to know this guy's going to fucking ask me a question about my situation. So sure enough, he comes up to me. He's like, what happened? And I just give it all to him. I just tell him how awful the situation is and what a terrible event this is in my life. And after talking for probably 10 minutes, he looks at me. He's like, yeah, you're young. You'll heal up well, dude. You'll be fine. And he like walks away. And I was just like, what a fucking asshole. But I remember a couple hours later, I was thinking, I'm going to heal up again. I'm going to heal up again. And it dawned on me, he was in his 60s. And at some point in life, healing becomes its own. I'm 36. Like, he's right. I know I'm going to heal. But when you become 60, infections become more of a concern. Healing itself is its own problem. And it's like...
Wait till you're 40. Yeah. That's coming up soon. And things change.
Stop it.
Things change, yes.
But that was one problem in my experience that I wasn't going to wrestle with. But he was right. This could be one, and it's going to be one soon in my life. So I guess this is something that I could take as a positive, you know? So, like, I was just looking for, as negative as I wanted to be, I was also just keeping my eyes and ears open for the lesson that I could take from the experience at the same time. And that's also just probably part of my mindfulness experience, is just being able to admit when I'm wrong sooner than most. So
I wish as first responders, we as a whole would take that mindset initially, because we do the woe is me for a long fucking time.
Well, and I did some of it.
No, and I'm not saying you didn't, but I'm just saying, like, you know, you have that point where you're either going to go one direction or another, right? And usually the bad directions, you start drinking, drugs, cheating on your wife, gambling, whatever, you know, and you're destroying everything that you've worked so hard for, or you're going to bounce back and do something different, right? And I love how you have such a positive point in that, even though you had your dark moment for a moment. I mean, I can call you almost on any day and be like, Josh, this is shit. And you're like, nah, it's good. And I'll be like, all right, it's good. Yeah. You know?
Well, and that's, I mean, I appreciate the compliment, I do, but that's what we can do in our lives all the time, really. You know, it's like, so often we get caught up in just, we will literally get frustrated because we go to our favorite coffee shop and get handed the wrong flavored drink. You know, this is chestnut praline. I ordered peppermint bark, you know, or whatever it is.
The fact that you know those.
What coffee shop are you going to?
It's a firefighter, remember?
Like our food drinks.
The baristas come into the firehouse.
Right. But like we just find ways to endlessly take away our own happiness. You know, like I'm having a great morning talking to you guys, but I'm sure something today is going to come up that I can either be pissed off and frustrated with for the next hour and a half, or I can just get with the program and move past this tiny experience. You know, so much of our experience is created by how we choose to interpret it, how we choose to frame it within ourselves. You know, framing effects are interesting. I can explain, like, if you go to the gym and you were to ask yourself, you were to sample people when they walk out of the gym, how are you feeling? Oh, I'm feeling great. I'm having a great experience. But you know, if you were to go through that physical pain that you've just suffered the last hour, and you were to wake up at your house in the middle of the night and your chest was on fire and you were like breathing heavy, you'd think you were dying, right? But it's the context of the workout that frames that experience as a positive experience, right? We can do this all the time, but we always tell ourselves a story about the experience that we're constantly having. And it's oftentimes that story that reflects whether or not it's going to be a positive or negative experience. And you can practice this endlessly throughout your day and find ways in which you can just reframe how you're seeing it. And if you practice that more and more often.
Just stop mind fucking yourself.
Yeah, we're our worst enemy.
Oddly enough.
Mindfulness.
Yes.
Oddly enough.
If we only knew a place that we could talk to somebody.
I know.
So
it
weird.
would be super cool.
I think that's a good point. You know, taking a step back, take a deep breath for just a second, be like, it's not as bad as it needs to be.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. So what are you doing now?
Talking to you, buddy. What are you doing right now?
Well,
this is about to get really weird.
I'm waiting for the
new
calendar to come out.
Right.
No, man. You know, just working at Mesa Fire, like I said, doing that. I coach one of my kids' basketball teams, so I'm lucky enough to do that. Obviously, they're only at a certain age because my 13-year-old is getting faster and stronger, and I can't keep up with them anymore. Even if I didn't have the bum knee, I don't know if I could keep up with them. So, yeah, man, just loving every minute of trying to raise my kids, and been married 16 years, so I get to spend with Dave, my wife, later today. But just doing everything I can to be a better influence on the world every single day. I feel like the phrase I try to wake up with every day is just to try to be useful, whatever that means, right? I mean, I remember when I was younger, I was kind of my dad used to always say, I need somebody with a strong back and a weak mind. And I knew who he was talking to. That was my job. So, when I was a kid and when I was a young man, it was all about, the brawn and the strength and what I could do. Well, now that some of that's gone, it's like, what other ways can I shift to just continue to be useful? And then when you turn gray-haired and you're older, what ways are you going to be useful then? To be useful is to have purpose. Yep. And so many of us wrestle with the ways our utility changes throughout our lives without recognizing that with that change comes new opportunities to find different ways of being useful. So the way I'm trying to be useful now is to continue to serve the community of Mesa as a paramedic, raise my kids and my family as best I can, and try to teach first responders how to be mindful and maybe take a skill away from them. So I like to teach first responders mindfulness meditation and influence local first responders through the Afterwatch Foundation and any way I can, because I've been there as a firefighter, and if I'm being completely honest, my experience wasn't half bad. I mean, I got paid while I was injured, my bills were managed. I was lucky enough to still be able to walk. I mean, there are so many others that have had much more debilitating situations, so it's easy for me to talk about positivity when I maintained so many. The only thing I really lost was a fire career. I didn't lose a limb. I didn't lose a loved one. I think those are much more difficult to come back from. But the same principles apply. How you choose to see the situation, what you're doing in your life to feel useful again, or to pick up where the pieces of your life fell, So many of those principles are taught no matter what the problem is, whether it's you got a bad grade, you didn't get the career you wanted, you lost a spouse, or whatever it was, So I'm just trying to find ways to be useful, dude.
Yeah, definitely doesn't mean it's over. You can always bounce back from something.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. I appreciate you being here.
No, thanks for having me.
We'll have to do more bromance stuff. So.
I was a little uncomfortable with it.
We didn't even touch the entire time.
I felt the energy.
We were touching under the table. We were touching in other ways.
I know. I'm sure.
Does your wife get jealous when you spend time with me?
She probably does.
Probably.
Yeah.
I don't.
I'm jealous when you're going to go spend time with her.
We should start a support group for all of us wives for all the stuff you guys do.
That's true.
Why can't my first responder love me the same way?
He shows Patrick more affection than me.
It happens.
It happens. But look at him.
Well, I appreciate you coming out, and I appreciate everything that you do with us. I appreciate what you do with Foundation Fortified, which we will talk about in the future. But I wanted you to talk a little bit more about your personal story, just because I find that to be super important.
Thanks, man. And right back at you guys. I mean, I absolutely love what you guys are up to, and I'm just honored to feel valuable enough to be along you guys with the journey of helping first responders locally. I mean,
sweet.
The fact that you guys find value in me is, sends me over the moon. So same thing.
Don't cry.
I know.
Dude, I'm holding back. Yeah. That was good. That was a great podcast.
Good.
Cool. All right, man. Well, thanks for coming out.
Thanks for having me.
Sweet.
Cool.